speaker is going to be discussing the ethics of climate change. Some questions for us to ponder. Please put your hands together for Jyotin, Kutty, Sastabhavan, Vice President and Chief Sustainability Officer, Tata Motors. A round of applause, please, as Mr. Sastabhavan joins us on stage.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Pleasure to be here at this conference to discuss and to tell you the story that we all lived in the past 3 years. The story starts in 1900s, but I'm not going to go back that much. I'm directly getting into 2020 when we were still dealing with the aftermath of COVID. The chairman of the group, Mr. N. Chandrasekharan, was dealing with a fundamental question that how should the Tata Group alter the way we look at things to make things better for the future, not just of the planet, not just of the group, but perhaps for the large number of people that we touch on a daily basis. Many of you would agree that around this table, that there is not a single person who is not touched by Tata in some way or the other, from the beginning of his day to almost when he shuts off his light, to call it a day. We also recognize that from the salt conglomerate to the steel conglomerate, it's one company that deals with the passions of a large number of people in this country, where the ethics of the Tata Group is normally associated with everything that is fair and transparent. He therefore said that if this group has to get into the future, we are now talking about the way of developing a company that is based on the foundational principles that led Tata Motors and the Tata Group to where we are today. He therefore conceptualized a program called Alingana. Alingana meant to embrace. And to embrace what? To embrace the earth, to embrace the people with whom we work, to embrace our customers, to embrace our suppliers, to embrace those objects that really give us life and sustenance, and to also embrace the planet, which is full of the biodiversity that we talk about. He therefore embraces 3 pillars. One which was dealing with net zero and the carbon question. The second, which was dealing with circularity and circular economy, and the third, which was dealing with nature and biodiversity. Having articulated targets on each of these, the group was committed to a net zero ambition of 2045. Let me just move on and tell you what happened in Tata Motors. We manufacture trucks, we manufacture cars, and we manufacture everything that really builds these products. And we knew that the emissions of this company had to be first understood, which consists of the scope 1 emissions, which is the fossil fuels that we use, the electricity that we use, and all the scope 3 emissions. And when we started inventorizing the emissions, we realized that we have a huge challenge in hand. Big trucks that move on the highways emit a lot of carbon. And we must recognize that when we are talking about climate change questions, we are not talking about the pollution that we normally see in most cities. We are talking about carbon dioxide and the impact of climate change and the 1.5 degrees question that we are all the country and the world is dealing with. We recognize that we are contributing and we are one of those big polluters in the group. And we realize that we have a problem in hand to deal with, but we did not know how. But thanks to the chairman's nudge and the company's wisdom, we started getting into the modeling of this whole scenarios and came to the conclusion that this is not an easy challenge to solve. But I must fast forward this in 3 years' time, that we today have a strategy for all our products moving into an area which is zero emission, whether it is through battery electric vehicles or through the hydrogen operated vehicles or through the hydrogen IC vehicles, that is internal combustion hydrogen vehicles. But we very quickly realized that we had to make 3 fundamental decisions. And those are the decisions that I'm going to talk to you, which really brings me to the heart of the question, which is related to the ethics of climate change. We realized that the decisions related to the products that's going to lead us into the 2045 era is requiring us to make decisions which is going to impact the large population in India directly or indirectly. The choices of technologies that we will make is going to finally get into the products which is going to make everything more expensive for the people who are consuming goods and services. And therefore we realized that any question of transition which we dealt with in the past had to be dealt with through the lens of what would be sustainable not only for the transition in terms of carbon dioxide, but what would become sustainable for the people who are going to be the consumer of goods and services and technologies, which is going to touch the length and breadth of this country. Let me just fast forward and tell you, if a commercial vehicle or a truck carrying goods and services across the country were to use the most efficient technologies, but it becomes unaffordable, then you would suddenly find goods and services which are used by the large population in this country would not be able to manage this transition in a just and equitable manner. Many of us, ladies and gentlemen, compare India as a country with its 1.5 billion population, and therefore the per capita emissions of this country is one of probably the lowest in the world. But if we were to really look at our footprint, who are sitting around this table, most of us would have carbon footprints which are almost equivalent to the carbon footprints of what would be used by people in the West. The reason why our per capita emissions are one of the lowest is because we have a large population who is probably subsidizing our emissions. And therefore we take great happiness in saying that India as a country does not have a problem to solve. It is simply because we have a population which is still not using the goods and services which really they are entitled to. In this transition, therefore, we came to a conclusion. And the technology choices that we started making for the products that is going to go into the next decade had to be made on this fundamental basis where there is equity and understanding that the right technologies are what is going to lead not only people into the next transition, but it carries the country and it takes the journey in an equitable manner. Therefore, we picked up certain things to be done and we said, let's do three things. First of all, let's inventorize our emissions and then come to our conclusion, are we able to find solutions in an equitable manner for sure, but does it make value to the business? Let me fast forward 3 years later, and I want to tell you that when Tata Motors gets to renewable energy, 100% of our renewable energy in another 3 to 5 years, we would have done this at a few thousand crores of net positive value that is brought to the table simply because we are creating a strategy related to renewable energy in a manner that is not only just equitable, it's good for the planet, good for the environment, and good for people. While doing this, the next question we started asking our question, are we picking up the right technologies for the battery operated vehicles? And are we using the right range equations? Are we doing the right engineering to be able to find that these vehicles of tomorrow are indeed better than the vehicles that are there today? Are we going to use the right technologies to see that they are the right ones for the future? And I can say with certainty, ladies and gentlemen, that today with great satisfaction, we at Tata Motors can say with certainty that we are going to lead the transition in a manner which is good for people, good for planet, and also good for profit. If you look at all the SDGs, and all 16 plus one of them, 17 of them, the first one there is no hunger and no poverty. Climate action is number 13. Somewhere we have life on land and life underwater. And we therefore came to the conclusion that unless we deal with each of these correctly, we would not be able to find a transition which is meaningful and sustainable for all. A last word, sustainability is not just about the environment. Sustainability is about all of those 17 SDGs when they talk to each other to make a difference in every aspect of change that we can all be proud of. That's the lesson from Tata Motors. That's the lesson from the Tata Group, that sustainability is good for profits, good for planets, and definitely good for people. Thank you. Can I?
Thank you.